Hello, everyone, and welcome to TechBeat, where leaders learn, innovate, and grow. I am your host, Earl Foote, founder, CEO of Nexus IT. Nexus IT is an outsourced IT support services and cybersecurity firm based here in northern Utah and servicing a nationwide footprint. I'm joined in studio today by my guest, Jason Klug, my guest friend, back around to and introduce here in just a moment. But first, I want to take care of a couple of house cleaning items. Thanks to Jason for lending us his Field Notes podcast studio here. We're hanging out here at Klugonyx today. Thanks to Cora eGolf as well, who is the Klugonyx podcast producer, who's helped get us all set up and ready, along with Mallory Lovestad. Mallory, you want to jump on camera real quick? Hey, Mal.
Hi. Hello.
Mal is our director of marketing. She helps out with our tech, and we never bring her on camera, so I figured you'll bring her on camera, so we do that.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the help, Mal.
Bye, guys.
You're welcome to jump in whenever you would like. Let's see. Tomorrow, with our partners, WebCheck Security, we are producing an event, Check Security Cyber Summit. That's happening at Jordan Commons. You can still get tickets for that event. LinkedIn profile. There are plenty of posts out there about it with the links to get. There's some really, really great content. Dan Bowden, who is the global CISO of Marsh, will be speaking on Fernandez Hackware. Both of those are the keynotes, the morning and afternoon keynotes, as well as a lot of other really cool content. I'll be on a panel about cybersecurity and compliance myself, and lots of other really great thought leaders out there. Topics on cybersecurity, compliance, data privacy, and other related content. So join us there tomorrow physically. Jordan Commons, go get your tickets. Let's see. TechBeat is now on all major podcast platforms. We would appreciate your subscription. Go out and subscribe to us on Spotify or Apple or Google or YouTube, wherever you like to consume that content. We will, as applicable, take question and answers throughout the hour here or towards the end. So if you have any questions for Jason, you have questions for me, certainly questions about Klugonyx, about the work that Jason and his team do, questions about building a CPG brand and all that, which we're going to talk about a little more today. Post those out there. We'll do our best to get to them. Let's see. Upcoming episodes. Jeff Erickson, who runs Strategic Partnercaster. He's joining me on May 11th here on TechBeat. Dustin Kenyon and Robbie, the founders of Washi, on second. Monty Deer, CEO of Kizik. Johnny Hanna, Derek Miner and Greg Trimble from Lemonade Stand. Paul Shin, Andrea Guthrie, who's Chief Strategy Officer. Coming up in the next several months. Keep an eye out for announcements on those segments. So let's get to my friend Jason Klug. So Jason is a multi-founded entrepreneur with a passion for consumer products. As the founder and CEO of Klugonyx, a full-service product development and manufacturing sourcing firm, he helps clients turn their ideas into reality. With specialties in product development, industrial design, and manufacturing process, Jason has worked on projects with his team over his career to help his clients bring their ideas. Additionally, Field Notes podcast, which you should all go subscribe to right now as well, providing valuable insights and expert advice to business owners on a variety of topics, including startups, leadership, and business. And welcome to TechBeat, my friend.
Thanks for having me. I'm so impressed. You just burned through all that so efficiently.
Was it?
That was
I don't know.
good.
I felt like I fumbled.
To do that live, when I do my intros, I do it like 3-4 times sometimes.
Yeah.
So live is harder.
Yeah, we were discussing which, but the mix up on a new our previous stream totally crashed right as we went live. It crashed once we had to create Mallory on the fly. In a couple of minutes, created a new stream, and so here we are live. Hopefully, you're able to join us. doing live podcast, there are some intricacies. We dealt with some technical difficulties here getting set up this morning.
Yeah.
And then go live, the whole thing crashes.
It's fun.
But we're live now and it's working.
Yeah, makes it more exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I was on Founder Field Notes with Jason a few months back. We've known each other for a few years. We met through
just the network.
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
Oh,
yeah, we're both. I just always saw you as another service provider I always wanted to connect with, and I think we just randomly connected. Was it an event? I got to meet in person. No, we had dinner.
We did.
Remember with Joe? Joe, and I had dinner.
That's right. We did have dinner. That was
a couple years ago,
like around Silicon Slopes Summit.
That's right.
Like a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was great.
Yeah, but we kind of
connected. Yeah, in person.
We'd kind of I think through Scott Paul and Kyle Muir, had kind of become familiar with each other and everything. And
now you guys set up my stuff.
Yeah,
the conference room in there. We have great meetings because of it.
Awesome.
Got the camera with the wide angle, and I like to mount and fidget with it when we're in camera, and highlight the people talking.
There we go.
It's a great setup.
Cool. Well,
thanks to Nexus IT.
We appreciate you being a partner for sure. Let's go back kind of the beginning first of all and talk about your story, right?
Yeah.
I know you grew up outside of Utah, if I recall, Georgia.
Yeah, well, that part of it. I mean, I originally was born in the Midwest.
Okay.
Wisconsin, Illinois. We lived in Iowa, Pennsylvania, Ohio. So we moved around a good bit as a kid.
Yeah.
I think it helped me with the ability to have major life pivots and then adapt quickly. I think that helped me moving around as a kid in school.
Was that a military thing or?
No, my dad was in the paint sales industry. So he's jumped around to a few different paint companies, and I ended up, I feel like I got a lot of great experience around adapt to a new school and stuff. For the later part through, from middle school up through college, and towards the end of college, I realized that Georgia just was the vibe I wanted. But I was looking around. I had a buddy that moved out to Utah to snowboard and have fun, So I came out here to visit him, and I loved the mountains, the views, all that stuff. I, got to do a day on the mountain. I was like, this is awesome. And it's so close to the city. And then also doing research and realizing how the economy was a good place to start a business. And I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know at the time what I wanted to make or do. And
you were how old?
This was years ago. So I was or no, more than that. It was 12 years ago. So I would have been 22.
Okay.
So good timing,
Yeah.
Dropped out of college. I only had a few hours left, and I was like, I'll finish school later,
Right.
But yeah, background wise, so the moving around helped me where I was like, okay, I'm going to take a leap. I'm going to move to Utah. I do think I'll stick around here for quite a while. I really enjoy it. And obviously now I have building a company and all that stuff. So it's I'm we're rooted here.
You got roots.
Yeah.
You can have a baby.
Yeah, we have exactly. Yeah. So I'm happy here, and so we're content here. But going back to even earlier, what got me into consumer engineering, as a kid, I always liked to take stuff apart and put it back together.
Yeah.
I think that was the root of it. My parents would get me something for Christmas or something, and they would be pissed off because then a few days later, I have it pulled apart in my room and hoping that I can put it back together successfully. So it was always a test. Can I put it back together successfully? I think I got better and better at it as I grew up, but there's definitely some things I took apart I could not put back together. But what that taught me is it always made me question things.
Yeah.
So I think that was the root of what got me into, the mechanical engineering side of what I do.
Yeah.
And so back, I remember incredible student, and I was
but you skated and played guitar.
Yeah, I was a little punk rock, and I like to skateboard. I like to play guitar. Called the Adhesives.
Yeah.
You definitely haven't heard of them, but it was fun.
It's a great name though.
Yeah, I liked it. It was fun, and I always enjoyed that. I was always a little edgy like that, which I enjoyed being that. And that's the circle of friends I always had were that way. but I was feel like I was able to branch out and connect with other types of people, and I guess back in the day.
Right.
Yeah, so like when I remember we were going to school, I was always a terrible student, as a lot of entrepreneurs are, very ADHD, terrible test taker, right? And getting into school, I think this is like perfect for me, where I had multiple schools and I only got into one, and it was called Southern Polytechnic State University.
Okay.
And it was like a 7,000 person engineering architecture school. Now it's owned by Kennesaw State University. They acquired it and made it their Kennesaw Tech campus.
Okay.
So it's definitely had a lot of capital put into it, and I'm sure it's even doing better. But yeah, I got into that school, and I remember the day my mom called me and she's like, "You got into a school." I was like, "Sweet. What school is that?" And she's like, "Southern Polytechnic State University." I'm like, "What the hell? I didn't even remember applying to that school." But anyway, so I got in. I didn't know what I was going to do there. And I remember an orientation, and they're like starting to split up where each goes. And they're like, okay, architecture goes into this room, and fashion design goes into this room, goes into that room, and then they're like, mechanical engineering stays in here. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds like something I'd like. Okay, I'll do that. So I stayed there.
Yeah.
So that's how I decided my major. And I'm glad I did, because I got to learn like the core skills around engineering and manufacturing processes.
Mm-hmm.
So super valuable. So those are the only classes that I cared about. I didn't care about like the core classes and stuff. So I feel while I was in school, when I was building my classes out and all that, I would always attach myself to like manufacturing technology or 3D modeling and working on like the CAD software that I got really skilled at with trial and error, and over time I just continued to like absorb information from and enjoy and stuff. Towards the end of school, it was like I was like 4.5 years in, and I was like, well, I still got like a year and a half left. I just don't, I don't know if I want to stay around that long.
Right.
And my buddy moved here to Utah, and he had a room open in the house that he was staying at.
Had you snowboarded before, by the way?
Yeah, I did. It was something that I did when I was really young.
Mm-hmm.
And then because I moved to Georgia, where there was just not as accessible, like that void was there always, but I didn't really,
But you skated.
think about it. I skateboarded and stuff, right? And I think what happened is I went on a trip with some buddies to the Carolina.
Oh yeah.
And I missed this.
Yeah.
My buddy Colin moved out here, and I, came out to scope it out and be like, oh, maybe I can move to Utah. And yeah, that's what happened. I was like, this is sick. And then I was researching great economy to start a business. At the time, I was also dabbling in my own side hustles, where I was working with like a very small startup and doing sales, where I was helping them sell small businesses on setting up their business Facebook account and stuff like that, and how to do social media and stuff. And I mean, no marketing background, but I could sell stuff. So I was like helping them do sales. And I was also working with a local bar that had a nice concert venue, and I would sell the other fraternities on throwing parties. So I would throw big parties for them, and then I would, help set up the bands and do all that stuff and get the drink deals lined up. And so I was like, wow, I can make money. I don't need to job money in other ways, So I was doing that, and that was fun and gave me a taste for entrepreneurship.
Right.
That was definitely a taste. I don't think I made that much money, but like a college kid on a weekend, throwing a weekend party, making $1,000. I mean, that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's a pretty good way to make bucks on it.
Like that was awesome. And at the same time, I was
Everybody
also
else was just partying,
party too,
making
money during the party, which is sweet, right? That's like for a college kid, that's sweet. That was fun. And then at the same time, I was also a go-kart mechanic.
Okay.
So I was very mechanical, and I was taking things apart and putting them back together. And I just thoroughly enjoyed, like, it was good. And I got now when you're fixing stuff, you have a deeper level of how it's made and you know, how it's engineered and
Right.
differently and stuff like that. So I feel like all those,
that's kind of, I grew up doing all that kind of stuff too.
it's fun, you know, but you like start to get, I mean, fixing issues and stuff. You start to get right, things in the house or whatever. You start to really get an understanding of how things are made and why, and things that could have been done differently and all that type of stuff.
It helps develop like problem solving, like, you know, pattern recognition and root cause analysis, like how you know, how you re-engineer something, right? Putting it back together. So I mean, I think it helps, like, okay, so in business, you're not necessarily tearing apart something mechanical and putting it back together, but you're tearing apart processes, you're tearing apart systems. You're going, okay, what's broken? Why isn't it working? When, you know, let's strip it back, let's find the root cause, and then let's build it, you know, rebuild it, but better.
So I think that's that definitely helped me in the business aspect, and then making products. So when I moved here, I actually ski bummed it for a year and worked at a ski resort. So that was like time for me to go and enjoy myself.
Sounds like the right thing to do in the in your early 20s.
And then at the end of that season, I got a job with Scott Paul. And that's what really started my, I would say, more professional career as a engineer and creator, which I got really lucky.
Shout out to Scott, by the way, in Japan.
He's in Japan
along
right
with
now.
The family.
He's probably sleeping. But the, you know, I got super lucky where I found that gig on Craigslist.
And this was with Armor Active.
So the tablet and iPad enclosures, and that's where I work with Kyle Meir and Scott Paul, and then a bunch of other. He has like people that work
Tara
there.
Anderson.
Tara.
That might have been the common link.
That makes sense.
Tara was with us,
and with
us, a good strategic partner that we work with.
So that was great, because it was a very entrepreneurial business, the way Scott ran things, and he was starting businesses within the business and stuff, and so I got exposed to that, which obviously, like today, I've done a little bit of that. But I got that gig on Craigslist, and it was a sales gig. And that was like my way in, because it was such a new company. They didn't have internal engineering and stuff like that, you know, and I don't even think that was like on the plan for them at the time. They were using factories and stuff to make the products that they had at the beginning. But I got there and got the sales gig. I showed up and I was like, let's drop out with, you know, no real professional sales experience other than like hack job sales experience. And I showed up and I was like one of 9 people in the interview, and there was definitely more experienced people than me, but I think I just kind of forced my way in.
Who made the decision? Was it Scott?
It was Scott, because the first interview was with the VP of sales. You know, I thought he probably was, and then
was that Andrew?
No, it was his name was Ryan. Andrew was one of the early salesmen, you know, at the time. So Andrew was great. And then the second interview, I showed up and met with Scott Paul, and then Nick, who was head. In that meeting, like, dude, I want to make stuff, you know, and you guys, your product is like really boxy, and I'd love to help make stuff. And I can do engineering and CAD and stuff like that. And I kind of sold. It was funny, because in that meeting, let's build you a computer and start you in engineering. And then Scott, no. And that just shows how he, you know, he's kind of like me, where he's like, impulsive decision. Yes. Let's just go. But you know,
but you got to see Scott in his buttoned up CEO days, you know.
Well, I wouldn't say he was buttoned up. He was wearing like a raggedy white t-shirt and cargo shorts, you know, and flip flops or whatever.
All right. Cool.
But you know, but it was still, you know, it was great, because I started the next Monday. I show up and no one was there. It just showed you what that company was like. I'm sitting there at a desk, and I was the first one there, and it's like, okay, what do I do? You guys gonna train me? So I did like a month of sales there, but we'd get these calls from like these big names that had a product for, and I'm like, okay, this is like a big deal. And he's like, and I'm like, well, we don't have what you want, but I think I can go. So I remember that night I went home and I engineered and CAD'd up of what he wanted. And then the next day in the morning, I grabbed Scott and I was like, Scott, so yesterday this guy called me, and he like looks him up on LinkedIn. He's like, oh, so it's like a big deal. And I was like,
legit.
So I went home and I engineered this for him as he asked for. And you did what? Wait a second, let's do this call together.
Not just that,
Yeah, I was like, and so I remember a guy, and it went pretty well. I don't think that deal ended up closing, but it was still like I was able to show the company that I can, all these demands that the sales team hearing through the door that we didn't offer,
custom product.
we could custom make it. And over time I got to do that and become the engineer and make these products. So I got so much experience, not only just hours spent in CAD, but all the experience working directly with suppliers and learning design for manufacturing, and learning from the sales team, like how to fill a need and create a pitch and stuff. Like that was super fun and valuable. And, and over time, I just became more and more an expert of making stuff. I was there for like 2 years, I think. So it was a short amount of time. It felt like the longest time, and I always look era. I must have just learned so much that it just felt like 5 years or something. So on the side of that, like side hustles, like I started with a guy who tried a company that failed, but I learned a lot from that. And then once that company got to the point where I was going to sell, I was like, okay, now's my chance to start developing. And I remember to do that, I had to pitch Scott because I needed him to buy me off camera here. Still have the same computer.
That's the same one?
Yeah, today. I've updated it and stuff, but yeah, built out a proper computer, got the SolidWorks license, which at the time was like $7,000. So obviously like they weren't paying me very much, so I couldn't afford that. So I convinced them to buy me that computer and then a 3D printer, which I still have out back. And that was enough for me to, do development as a service.
Yeah.
And I remember that I went to go pitch Scott because I think he gave me like $15,000. So it wasn't like a ton of money, but to get those pieces to make stuff happen.
Yeah.
And I remember showing up at like 8 in the morning at his house, his kids ready for school. Let me buy you breakfast. I showed up with McDonald's and I had my whole pitch and my business plan and stuff. And I convinced him to give me the money. And he's like, no, you're going to have to get Natalie's. Now I was like, Natalie, please, I got to do this. And that's when I really started Klugonyx. A 1-bedroom apartment and those
a 3D
tools.
Printer and a CAD machine.
Yeah. And that was it. And then I just started making stuff.
Yeah.
So
and this was what,
2014.
2014.
Yeah.
Okay, so
almost 10 years ago.
Almost 10 years ago. Yeah.
So it was fun.
Not to toot Scott's horn because I know he doesn't need that, but
right.
But you think about the people who have come out of Scott's Ventures, right, and particularly Armor Active, and how many founders have now come out of that? Yourself and Kyle and Tara, and of course plenty of others. He's Scott's has a hand in now, probably hundreds of different things.
Well, and what he did at like Instafluence and like his she outside of that, and then obviously like Lee. So yeah, he had a lot of. He was very inspiring, and showed people that if you want to make it, you can. The risk. So I'm glad I connected. Now him and I are still very close, and we were just talking to him this morning. We're still, and we've done other business ventures together.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the start of it. I would say 6 years of that was just me just engineering, and started hiring designers and stuff like that, and started to scale outward and just do time and material based service. And that was really, that was just valuable because it was just more engineering experience, learning how to run an agency and the cash flow of it and stuff, which is, as you know, it could be very tough, especially when you're small and you don't have reserves built up. But it taught me how to run frugally and lean and keep it that way.
Super scrappy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so after that business continued to grow, and I started the clients building brands and what you can do with a brand, that's when I realized, like, okay, I want to start a brand now. And at the same time of me starting like my official brand, which is Dry Home, I was also working with a partner out a China office, manufacturing and supply chain sourcing and management. So that was like that that would have been 2018 or so. So that was like a big year of bolting on like the next, growth opportunity for my business. Um, so yeah, that started. Well, actually, that started in 2017 and then became official in 2018.
Okay.
So yeah, that year the focus was, turning clients that I was already designing and engineering products for into where we were helping them source and then manage their manufacturing of those products we're designing.
Yeah.
So we're doing that, and with that, then I had the whole development and back office side of consumer products built out to where it's like, okay, I want to build a brand, and this brand is something that I can really build a team out that would be a separate team to something very scalable and sellable eventually one day.
I love the iterative process, by the way. Like start with the engineering, then you look at what are my opportunities to diversify, serve like portfolio. I can do manufacturing services, and
definitely.
And ultimately, okay, I'm going to create my own consumer brands.
Definitely like vertical integration over time. And the funny thing is I've looked back at that pitch that I gave Scott Paul back in 2014, and a lot of stuff is still like what I'm doing today. So it's like I still like, have manufacturing and management, and then had the vision to build brands that could be like portfolio brands and stuff. So it's always good to look back that my head was in the right place, even though I felt like it wasn't back then. And I was just a chicken with my head cut off, but it worked, but the brand side of things is obviously there's a whole other component to that I was not skilled at, which is the brand itself and building that whole side of it. And I learned so much of that because my wife, Kelsey, who I founded that with, and her background is in UX and design, and she just has like a really good mindset when it comes to building a quality brand versus just like, yeah, let's just whip up a logo and go. It's like so much more to it. Like, she set like research and dig into like who's our user, who are we speaking to, like what feelings are we giving them when they land on our website and why. Everything down to the user experience of when someone lands on our website, how they move through our website to conversion and how we get our conversion rate up and stuff like that. So she's
a handy gal to have around.
Oh, she's fantastic. I mean, now once Darai got to the point where it was too big, she stepped back and now works for Google. And it's a very casual, easy job for her, which is so funny. But she
and you brought in a CEO, right?
Alicia. So that was one thing I realized. This is actually last year. Darai continued to grow and become its own thing, and you can see like we have a warehouse here now. We do the fulfillment in-house, its own team, its own management. And I was last year, obviously I had a lot going on, and my heart's in the making of stuff. It's not in running a direct consumer brand, like not. But I'm good at like the product side of it. And so I realized I needed to have a CEO that runs that, and I can however I need. And I was fortunate enough, I did a job posting on LinkedIn, and I got like 500 applicants, and people wanted it because they were salary hunting. Most of it was like a bunch of like old dudes that were like, yeah, 200, do it. It's like, no, man, you don't even know what we do. And they're robot messages that I was getting. But thankfully, I got a few really, Keisha being on that I was fortunate enough to connect with, where her background is she was working for a company doing that experience, but she also worked at Amazon and Walmart and the e-commerce side of things. So she just really understood e-commerce and brands and stuff. It had operations. We already had Alexa that came in to help Kelsey as a brand director. So we had there, and then I just needed to place that leader in, which was Alicia. And then she came in, was really able to help continue to like real grow. So that was like a big move for me, but it was like, an awesome move to have her on supporting, because I can't. She's so yeah, that's continued to grow. And then, my side, I've been able to just focus on the creating product side of things, and the development and the sourcing and helping work through that. And that business has grown to the point where in China we have an office where we have 32 employees under a WOFE, so we have a business and an entity there that is ours. And then we have this office where we have design, engineering, project management, sales team. So we're able to really take something from like a napkin sketch all the way through to manufacturing and importing it, so we basically can deliver it to your warehouse or wherever you're
Yeah.
and that's what like I love doing, so it's really easy to continue to do it.
Super cool, man.
Mm-hmm.
Great story, and I love just kind of hearing the evolution along the way of from things apart as a kid, putting them back together,
Mm-hmm.
and how that's led to you creating a fully outsourced product design and manufacturing organization along with CPG brands, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's tell the guest a little bit more about Dorai. Dorai.
Dorai, yep.
Yeah.
DoraiHome.com.
Very kind of niche products, to talk
for
about it a little
now.
bit. Yeah.
I mean, like we have plans to grow and just build more than just like what we have. But right now, the core product line we use, there's a core material used, which is this right here, like these coasters.
Oh, yeah.
We call it a stone that we call Diomat, and it's made of a mixture of ice earth, which is free.
Okay.
And recycled paper fibers, and it's made into these boards, and this rapidly dries moisture. So when we make a bath mat, for example, so when you step on that bath mat, your wet footprints like disappear right before your eyes. So we got those products. We got kitchen products. We have these coasters. We have sink caddies that you put your soap on and stuff. I think we have like a full pad that you lay out on you could lay out on your counter and then dry your dishes on it. And we have some other products that are up and coming, like we're making a full-size dish rack, which is like a relaunch of another dish rack we did. We have a bunch of products that we've are already on the market, and it's grown to an 8-figure brand. It's continuing to grow, and honestly, I really enjoy it because it changes my perspective of how I work with clients. Because the clients, I was always the service provider, versus now not only a provider, but I'm sitting in their shoes to learn from Dorai. And I've had great conversations where it's like brainstorm and chat, friend to friend about what what they're learning at their brands and how they change this up and this helped grow this and so on and so forth. And I feel like that has been incredibly valuable to how we provide a service, because we could speak to the other side of things now from experience and almost like go back to the trenches that they're in.
Makes you
now.
far more empathetic, and therefore a better partner, because you understand the process, you understand the challenges, all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
and it also helps, like when a product or a creator comes to us to build a product, come to us with an idea, or even sometimes they come to us with like a fully designed product. It's helpful to then dig in a little bit and go, well, it's a product, or like you may be solving the problem for yourself specifically, but are you solving the problem for 1 million people that are going to buy this from you? And I think it's helped us as a service provider, just kind of, you just provide a better service. And we've actually become one of our biggest clients ourselves.
There you go.
So
there you go.
That's been
That's
fun.
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Have you toyed with other CPG brands, or is
Dorai is definitely the main one, where it's a new brand I started last summer. That's a golf company called Almost Golf. And that's like, it's a smaller company because it's one industry, and I did it because I love golf and I saw a gap of there's not there's not a lot of quality accessories out there. I feel like there's quality golf clubs and golf ball like that, but I didn't see quality like brushes or towels or divot repair tools and stuff. lot of the markets low cost, cheap items, but then they're, but then you have like a $5,000 bag clubs.
Right.
You have $12 piece of crap divot tool maker that you knit, and it's thick and bulges in your pocket when you're golfing.
Yeah.
So I saw that as a gap. So my buddy Scotty and I started a company, Almost Golf, which is respect in Gaelic, and it's all about making very quality golf accessories, and that brand eventually can continue to grow. And the great thing about that is, like, on that for me is really doing what we would do, and the developing the product, making sure the quality control is good, and all that type of stuff. And then Scotty's focus is on the front end side of it, the brand and the type of stuff.
Which I see the brand right there on your mug.
Yeah.
So
Almost.
Right.
Yeah.
So
almostgolf.com. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's been it's been fun.
Gaelic, huh?
Yeah.
I just came back from Ireland.
I know. Yeah. It was a sweet trip.
It was a sweet trip.
Yeah, with sweet experiences, right?
Yeah. With
Pat.
Patch. Yeah, with Patch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, really in the past 9 or 10 years here, you've built multiple businesses, multiple brands, right? Service, product, they're very different type of businesses, and in fact, a lot of thought leaders out there or other entrepreneurs would say, lane, right? Like
Sure.
Focus on what you know, and don't try to diversify too much, because you lose focus of your core, right? But you've successfully got a couple of different CPG brands now. You've got still Klugonyx, the main gig for product development and manufacturing. And I'm sure that the way that you look at and based on those businesses is different, and the problems that you found along the way in those are different. But maybe let's just let's dig into, you pick this side. What are a couple of the main challenges that you've run into, and what are some of the things you've learned in that process? How have you solved challenges?
I mean, I would say for any founder out there, I definitely made the mistake where I was trying to do too much too soon and too early, where I spread myself too thin, and I was trying to do things that I shouldn't be trying, and stuff like that. Like, I'm not I don't know marketing, And, with the building brands, like I said, I'm not a brand builder, and I could not going to do it as well as like what Kelsey's been able to do. And so I learned, and I humbled myself too many times early on, where it's like, well, I shouldn't have focused my energy there. I should have just focused on the core product. And I brought myself back to there many times. And over time, I never fundraised. It's always been bootstrapped, right? For Durai, I did a small investment round in 2019 of like 120 grand. To build a brand to 8 figures with that much is very challenging.
Yeah.
But I forced myself to hire when I need it, then force me to like hone in and focus on the things so I can make the stepping stones to hire the next role when I have enough cash flow and whatnot. I realize that it's like, as a business owner, it's like you look at yourself like an octopus, where you have like the 8, 10, and each has a specific skill set, and over time you have to cut off a tentacle and figure out which tentacle is the most important to cut off. And once you cut that off, you have to trust the person that you cut off to grab it and take it over. I don't know if they're attached. You know what I mean? Like, where it's like, project management was one thing, or design was first. I hired designers, industrial designer that would do the design in the front end, and then eventually I replaced myself on engineering, so I was able to focus on the sales side and then still do some engineering. Over time, I completely removed myself from engineering, where I have a team of engineers now, and I still focused on the sales side of things, but then operationally, I needed someone to be the project manager, and operations were running smoothly and more and more sophisticated as we grew. And so I think over time, once I figured out and we started getting in a groove and cash flow was good, and I realized that that's what I had to focus on, is looking at the gaps, dropping the ball on, and realizing the right time of when I fill that gap and hire that role out.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a skill that has helped me dramatically grow my businesses in a lean way, because I'm for the right time, not becoming a bottleneck. And I'm also, like sometimes
There's so much template.
sometimes you do have to do it yourself a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's valuable in the sense of, if you have enough of it, then when you do bring on that role, it's easy for you to articulate how you want it to be done, the way you'd hope that it would be done.
Yeah.
And then obviously then they can pick it up and they can be more autonomous on their own to do it however they end up doing it. But it helps you manage it and lead it. But I've seen that as being extremely valuable out. And that applies to both businesses.
Okay. Yeah.
Like to the product development service, and this manufacturing service applies to the brand. And that's like, for example, why I replaced myself and hired Alicia. And Kelsey hired Alexa to take over the brand management, and then I hired Katie to do operations and inventory management and all that type of stuff. And so it applies to really both those types of businesses.
Yeah, really. It's a greater rate of the solopreneur, right? Like, particularly a bootstrapped solopreneur, right? You and I have both built that way. And it's entirely different than having a founding team, or than getting capital up front to build something. With capital up front, it's easy and quick to cut off those tentacles and say, all right, you're managing product, you're managing development, you're managing services, whatever, right? And appoint executives or leaders. Obviously, finding the right people, that can and will own, is a big part of that challenge. But as a solopreneur, you really oftentimes, particularly when you're smaller, cash flow's tight, you have no other teach yourself how to do everything. Like you have to wear every hat in the business, and then you have to one by one kind of those hats.
And they might not be great hats at first, but
right. And you have to prioritize those hats. Like, what if I shed this role and give it to somebody else, have the greatest impact, or what is, and where do I need somebody to step in and help with those weaknesses. Again, like if you have a founding team of 4 or 5, or you get money pretty early in your journey, it's a different way to build. For many of us, it's not talking building that over months, we're talking over years. Like, as you're cash flowing the business and budgeting, okay, I need this position, it's going to cost me all in 200, 250 plus a year, right? So prioritize, when can I create the headroom in the business so that I can hire that position. Bring up. It's an interesting iterative process, and test your patience.
I think it's value in the sense of, like, for example, Durai, we're going to do our first official fundraising round. But the thing is I've raised a bunch of capital and then just blow it quickly, and their burn rate increases too quickly, and they're necessarily being as strategic about it. But because it's been built in such a lean way, and we continue to run it in a lean way, if we raise $2 million, we're not going to run to hiring immediately. We're still going to continue to look for the timing of when we're filling that gap and why, and continue to run it in a lean manner. It's so much more out of that fundraise than we would if, like you're saying, we had 2 million from day one and we can quickly hire and fill all these gaps. And we realize, well, maybe we didn't need to fill this or that gap yet, or maybe, oh dang, we over ordered inventory, or we tested this channel and spent too much on this ad channel when what wasn't working from, so it's all those things can, it's valuable to be cautious, like you don't have any money. And respect that
Your
fundraise
investors
capital.
will thank you too. And don't get me wrong, like, investors put money into a business
Mm-hmm.
to inflate that as quickly as possible,
Sure.
to grow it as quickly as possible, right? So,
Mhm.
and you have to spend money to make money.
Yeah.
But founders who have learned to be scrappy, who have learned to be resourceful, who've learned to operate a lean business, right, out of necessity, they're a safer bet for capital, and the responsible deployment of that capital
Yeah.
than a frivolous founder who is going to go give themselves $1 million pay raise and a new
Right.
Ferrari as part of the
Yeah.
the capital raise.
Yeah.
Um,
Definitely stretching it out only. I mean, I feel like it makes the shares more and more valuable that way versus just blowing through it and having to raise again and then dilute again and all that type of stuff.
yeah.
So so I value that, that mindset. I think I got that from Scott too, because he was pretty bootstrapped. So I owe that to him as well, where he was pretty frugal with, how he made decisions in life, and that rolled into me. So
Right.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's good learning early on
Yeah.
in your career for sure.
Yeah, no one's going to invest in a time and materials product development firm either. So it's not like I was able to raise on that side of things very easily. So
yeah, services are really challenging to raise in. Like
so you just got to cash flow it and grow it organically.
Yep.
I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree. Well, here I am, 2.5 decades into doing that, right?
Yeah.
And it's
good.
not easy. I won't sugarcoat it. Like, skipping it's a slow, methodical, at time painstaking process, right?
Yeah.
But it's also very rewarding, and it's nice to look back and build and go, okay, well, we did that. Like,
yeah, definitely. You look at the business. I think it elevates how proud you can be about it. I think there's a different aspect to it, which
I'm not discounting. And there are businesses, there are industries that you have to, right? Situations where
tech and SaaS and all that.
your momentum, warrants it. Capturing adequate market share warrants it, right? There are cases for raising capital.
It all comes down to like style and preference, just like anything, and this is just my style and preference, and yeah,
but it's worked well for you so far. We're winding down with just a few minutes kind of left. Mal, I haven't even kept an eye on. Are there any good questions we should get to? Okay. So, we got about 5 minutes left. Which, by the way, it's been, fascinating to kind of dig deeper into your story. I mean, I know some of it, but it's been really cool to hear more of it. And I'm sure it's, I love highlighting these founder and leadership journeys and stories, just because there's so much to extrapolate, and learn from the process that each of us have gone through. And every one of us, that journey is different, right? It's we approach it a different way. Our perspectives, the way we set it all up is different, and the challenges we find, along the way are different, and the way we solve those are different. So for me, I love doing, TechBeat, these podcasts. One, because I love to hear the stories, and I love to learn, from the stories. Two, I love, to add out the greater, ecosystem, and our colleagues that are building, cool businesses themselves, right? All that being said, I mean, with a few minutes left, what are one or two of kind of your main lessons or pieces of advice that you would leave as your parting words?
Yeah, I mean, the things that I look back at that were the most valuable to me is the mentorship, and finding a mentor, and when you do find one, like really investing in that relationship, So I owe a lot, to like Scott, for that. I think that's been incredibly valuable. And then I think my management style has helped me a lot, where as soon as I find someone that can do a role, I'm pretty laid back, and I like to remove myself and let them run the show on that side of things. That's helped me a lot, because one, I don't like rip my hair out and power numbers and stuff, right? And it's just really hard to do it all yourself, and that's been valuable. And then it also they grow,
Yeah.
and taking charge is rewarding to them, where they can build out a position in a department and have that opportunity, and they
You can
take
only
pride
learn
in
by
that
doing it.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I always think that that's a valuable way to lead, especially as soon as you find the right person for that role, and then invest in them and let them take the time to have some mistakes and learn from them and stuff like that. You have to let that happen for their own growth. Um, so yeah, I'd say those are two big things that I would say are super valuable, is mentorship, and then management, about empowering the people that work with you to help you build what you're building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome. One leadership, management lesson there, which openly, a lot of solopreneurs, particularly, bottleneck and cap their business because they want to from
Yeah.
every business, everything that happens, right? And that's just, it's not a scalable practice, and you're going to drive, right? It's not modern business and how people work and want to be led, right? Um, so I think that's great. The mentorship thing. I mean, candidly, that's why TechBeat exists. When I created TechBeat, I had an unsustainable number of people that wanted me to mentor them, right? Which I love to. And look, I won't pretend to have all the answers, and I won't pretend to have the right answers, right? And my industry is different than other industries, right? But over the years, I've had a lot of founders who come to me and wanted mentorship, and it got to a point where it was too many to be able to to help, and so I was like, well, I'm going to start creating ship just that can cast a wider net and provide more more useful ideas to a wider audience. So that's really why I created TechBeat. So as we wrap and we sign off here, in honor of being in the Founders Field Notes studio, and celebrating your podcast as well. I know you like to cap out your podcast with what's your theme, right? Because you look at these books with your guests that have joined you. I see Allison Roberts up there. I see Renya Nelson. I know I'm over here somewhere.
Yeah.
Every founder chooses a theme, of kind of their greatest learnings or accomplishments. What in honor of Founders Field Notes, what's your theme?
I think this, to put it simply, it's just make stuff well. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, that's like the core of what we do. And I think when you make stuff well, not only for our clients, my own brands, it's like, I'd rather make good quality stuff than cheap stuff to just fill a void on Amazon. I'd rather make like a quality product for a quality brand that has a longer life cycle. And I think that's what business owners' mindset should be. There's too many businesses that are like get rich quick type mentality, especially in like the consumer product space with what you see on Amazon and whatnot. If there are more entrepreneurs and founders that are building brands or companies, and this goes for any business, tech and whatnot, right? It's like, make stuff well, good service, build a good product, and one will be putting less garbage out there, and we'll be putting higher quality things louder, and they appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely see that, in Omos and in Durai, like, again, niche, but higher quality, type of products that are not meant to be the $5 you
people appreciate
throw away.
it.
Yeah.
So,
well, and that translates into the way that you service as well. I realize but it's, it's a mindset around providing the same sort of experience, but on the services side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remind people often, it's like, it's about this, people, I say it's the product, but it's not to me. I see it more about being about the people. So the clients, the brands we're working with, so the team here and my team, right? So it's like prioritize the people for, on the side. And when you do that and, people are happy and the culture is good and all that type of stuff, like we end up building for that environment.
Yeah,
So
totally.
yeah, that go back to, that'd be another good one. Make stuff well, and it's about the people, not the product.
Yeah, there you go.
The product is the, well, people are treated well and
yeah, because you
happy.
prioritize. I mean, people
Mhm.
first. I mean,
Yeah.
that would be a familiar conversation. Mal's been around a lot, and not only does it feel like the right do ethically, but it creates better companies. I mean,
Yeah.
we could spend finding out on a podcast about culture, right? And
Yeah.
but
Put it
when
simply. Yeah.
when you value your clients and you value your people and you treat them all well, you create a business that's going to work. So
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, it's been a lot of fun to have you on TechBeat.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, being my guest.
Yeah. Thanks
Thanks
for having me, man.
having us in the studio.
Yeah.
And thanks for sharing all of your fantastic stories and background and lessons with the TechBeat audience. We're gonna sign off.
Awesome. Thanks for
my friend.
having me, dude.
Yep.
Yeah.